Continuing the topic, the root system as the hidden architecture of a flowering plant. What you see above the soil is only half the story. The real foundation lies below, where the root anchors the plant, absorbs resources, and sets up everything the shoot system depends on. The diagram here frames the chapter beautifully. Think of roots as the support base, while the shoot system handles leaves, flowers, and fruits. Keeping that division clear is the first step to mastering plant morphology. A flowering plant is always organized into two major zones: shoot system and root system. The shoot system stays above the soil surface and includes stems, leaves, flowers, and fruits, while the root system remains underground and focuses on support and absorption. That soil line in the middle is more important than it looks, because many MCQs test whether you can separate aerial and subterranean parts correctly. The broader idea is simple. The plant survives by dividing labor between these two systems. There are three fundamental root systems you should keep straight from the start: taproot, fibrous root, and adventitious root. Taproot develops from the radicle, so it has a clear primary root with lateral branches. Fibrous roots are short-lived and arise as a cluster from the base of the stem, which is why they look like a dense mat. Adventitious roots come from plant parts other than the radicle and often show up in special situations, especially in grasses and climbers. If you remember origin first, identification becomes much easier. The root system is built for four major jobs: absorption, anchorage, storage, and synthesis. Absorption brings in water and minerals. Anchorage keeps the plant stable. Storage holds reserve food. And synthesis reminds us that roots can also participate in producing plant growth regulators. That last one is a subtle but important exam point because many students stop at absorption and anchorage alone. The deeper understanding is that roots are not passive structures, they are active physiological organs. The root tip is organized into distinct zones, and the order matters a lot. At the very tip is the root cap, which protects the delicate apex as the root pushes through the soil. Just above it lies the meristematic region, where cells divide actively. Then comes the elongation zone, where cells lengthen and contribute to root growth, followed by the region of maturation. This sequence is a favorite exam pattern, so it helps to see it as a developmental story rather than four disconnected labels.
At the cellular level, the root's growth zones reveal how structure becomes function. The meristematic zone has very small, thin-walled cells with dense cytoplasm, and their main job is repeated division. In the elongation zone, those new cells enlarge rapidly, which is what drives increase in root length. The mnemonic here is powerful. Multiplication comes before enlargement. That order is non-negotiable in biology questions, and it prevents a lot of confusion during revision. Maturation is where the root cells finally differentiate and become specialized. And this is also where root hairs appear. Root hairs are delicate thread-like outgrowths that greatly increase the surface area for absorption of water and minerals. A high-yield trap is that root hairs do not arise from the meristematic or elongation zones. They originate from epidermal cells in the maturation zone. That detail is small, but it is exactly the sort of detail exams love to test. Root modification is where the root system becomes especially interesting because structure shifts to meet specific survival needs. Roots can be modified for storage, support, or respiration, and each modification comes from a very different ecological demand. Once you start thinking in terms of problem and solution, these forms become easier to remember. The root may still be underground, but its role can stretch far beyond simple absorption.
Storage roots are a classic example of modification by origin. In taproots, carrot and radish type forms store food in the main root, while in adventitious roots, sweet potato is the familiar example. The key exam point is not only the storage function, but the origin. Carrot is a taproot storage form, whereas sweet potato is an adventitious root storage form. That difference is frequently used to test whether you are memorizing function only or understanding the biological source of the structure.
Support roots show how plants adapt to mechanical stress. Prop roots arise from branches and descend to the ground, giving pillar-like support in banyan trees. Stilt roots emerge from the lower nodes of the stem and provide stability in plants like maize and sugarcane. It is useful to picture them as two different support strategies. One drops from above, while the other braces from the lower stem. That contrast makes the examples easier to retain and recall under pressure.
Respiratory roots are a brilliant adaptation to waterlogged habitats. Pneumatophores grow upward out of the soil in swampy regions, so the root system can obtain oxygen for respiration. And the direction of growth is the real clue. Normal roots are positively geotropic, but pneumatophores are negatively geotropic, which is a high-yield exception students often miss. That makes this topic especially attractive for assertion reason and concept-based questions.
Everything in this unit ties together in one clean blueprint: root types, root regions, and root modifications. Taproots, fibrous roots, and adventitious roots are distinguished by origin. Root cap, meristematic zone, elongation zone, and maturation zone define the tip. And storage, support, and respiration explain the major modifications. If you can move confidently from origin to zone to adaptation, you are not just memorizing botany, you are understanding how the plant is built. That is the kind of clarity that makes exam questions feel familiar instead of frightening.